Hey, what's going on? In today's video, I want to talk about this book, The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. And I think his son, he wrote this book with. And I picked up this book because it was one of our book club books this month. And for February, I made a commitment to myself that I wouldn't buy any new books unless it was for book club, because I took a look at my buying history, and from January to December to November, for like the past 3 months, I bought like 12 different books, and it was kind of getting out of control. For me personally, when I hear someone recommend a book, I automatically just go to Amazon and buy it. And as you can probably tell, there's like a ton of books on my backlog that I still need to read. So February, I was like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself. I'm not going to buy any new books unless it's for book club. And this was the book that we decided to read for book club. And real quick, if you're not part of a book club, I highly recommend that you either create one or join one. It's so awesome to like be able to read and discuss the topics from a book with a different group of people and just hear different perspectives, because we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different experiences, life experiences, and it's just great to hear someone else's take on the same information. So I've been doing the book club for, gosh, I don't know, probably it's got to be over a year now. I think maybe over 2 years now, maybe. But there's me and 3 other people that meet every 2 weeks, and we just pick a book and we discuss the book for 2 cycles. So usually it takes about a month or so for us to read a book, and we'll spend 2 of the sessions discussing the book before we choose a new one. So yeah, for February, it was this book, The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. And this book, it's thick, as you can see. I'm only probably like a quarter away through it right now. And it's so crazy to see the link between trauma and illness. So there's an example in here where he talks about how when we go to see a doctor, if something's wrong, like no one ever asks what happened in our childhood, right? It's just like, what's the symptoms? Here's a prescription to treat the symptoms, and you're out of there. And especially in, I don't know about like in Canada, it might be different, but in the US, I know they just really want to pump people through. And I think the average time people spend seeing the actual doctor is like probably minutes or so, because the doctor wants to see as many patients as possible to prescribe as many medications as possible. So it makes sense that they don't go deep into your past or into any trauma that might have happened as you were young that is probably causing the illness that you have now. So there's so many links and stories in this book that talks about different people with different, traumatic experiences early on, and how that is linked to the illnesses that they experience now. So, like, for me, honestly, I almost felt like a bit traumatized reading some of the stories of people getting traumatized. Like, it's crazy what people will do to other people. It's sad, right? It's super sad. But it also made me reflect back onto my life and think through, like, what kind of trauma did I experience as a kid, right? It doesn't always have to be like super extreme. So he talks about big T trauma versus little t trauma. So even as little as you're crying as a baby and no one picked you up, right? So if your mom was busy or your parents were busy and you're crying in your crib and they just left you crying and no one came to pick you up, like that could be a traumatic experience for you as a kid, right? Right now we don't think about it, but every little experience kind of layers on top of each other, and eventually it can manifest into a disease like years and years or decades down the road. And one thing I liked about what he said in this book was illness or disease, it's not a thing that happens, it's a process that happens. So cancer isn't just one day you wake up and you have cancer and say, oh my God, I have this thing called cancer now, or whatever illness, you get diagnosed with. Like that illness or disease has been in the making for probably months, years, or decades. So it's so crazy to, yeah, just realize that, you know, trauma, we all experience trauma, right? That's one thing I took away from this too. It doesn't have to be like extreme cases of trauma where that classifies you as, experiencing trauma. We all have experienced trauma, and that's why the book is called The Myth of Normal, right? There is no normal, right? There is no normal person or normal health. We all experience some type of trauma, whether it's a big T trauma, like super traumatic experience, or a small T trauma. And that impacts our health and wellness, for years and years and years. And if it doesn't get resolved, if we don't do any trauma release or any healing, then that's going to manifest as disease. So, yeah, I'm only a quarter way through this book right now. It is a heavy book, like literally, and also the stories and the material is a bit heavy as well. But I feel like this is probably something that everyone should read because it's such a common denominator. Again, like we've all experienced trauma. So to understand how your trauma impacts your life today is important so that you can then do any work to release that trauma. And then hopefully it doesn't impact you even further and manifest into any disease or illnesses. So super excited to keep reading this. It's probably going to take, a few more weeks because it's so big, but that's all good. He is a trauma and addiction expert, Gabor Mate, so he's probably like the expert in this field around this. And yeah, I'm excited to see what else there is to learn from this book. So that's it for today's video. I'll see you in the next one.